Welcome everyone to tonight's school committee meeting. We are starting a little early. It's only 6:30, but we are going to have a budget visioning meeting, specifically over the first hour, and then at 7:30 we're going to get into our regular agenda. We have a microphone here in the middle of the room. You can come up and speak to the microphone. We just need to know who you are and what street you live on, and then we'll let you have your 2 cents on it. Alex, this was kind of your idea, so why don't you give us a quick introductory about what we're hoping to get out of this?
Sure, thank you. So this is the first ever budget visioning session that we've held, and we're hoping it's going to be a success. Can you guys hear me in the back?
Yep.
Great.
We have plenty of seats up front.
Yeah, please do come up closer.
I tried, they didn't buy it.
So the budget visioning session is hopefully an opportunity for us to hear from you, because we have our budget process, which every other department in town follows pretty similarly. But what we want to do is make sure that early on in the budget process, we hear input from the community. Oftentimes our budget process will begin over the summer, looking at the drivers, state mandates, other changes in the district that we have to adapt to, and that drives a lot of what we budget for year to year. What we're hoping tonight to do is, that process throughout the year will remain the same, but we're hoping tonight to add that community input that will help us not just this year, and because we are in tough fiscal times, a lot of the changes that even we might want to see might not happen this year. But when we think about a long-term strategic budget, years long, looking forward into 3, 4, 5 years out, what do we want our schools to look like? And we probably all have our own ideas, but we thought it was a good idea to reach out and let the community talk as well. This is something that I think we will take back to Budget Subcommittee, and we might not be able to incorporate these thoughts and ideas into the FY17 budget, but it'll help us take a longer framework, and especially when we're talking in town about the master plan. I know we have one of our selectmen among us. When we're talking about our years-long approach to how we do business as a town, we wanted to make sure that we're putting the community first and making sure that we don't only get feedback when we present the finished budget in March, but also when we start the process, because that's very helpful. Now, we did discuss this last meeting, but I want to say it again. We're not likely to have any comments tonight where someone might say, we're going to do, this would be a great idea, and we suddenly tonight say, yes, we're going to spend $200,000 and do it. But what we will do is we'll take that back and we'll take that feedback in. And this is an opportunity for us to learn what the values of the community and what the community wants. We're not expecting any big changes that will happen tonight, and that's certainly not what we're doing. We're just here to listen. And then we'll take it back, and when we do our budget, not just this year, but in the following years, we're hoping to be able to incorporate as much as that as possible, or at least to weigh the pros and cons of each decision. So when we talk about what we're looking for tonight, I think it's just ideas. Talking about whether that's programmatically, whether that's bigger picture. We talk a lot about a mission budget versus a level staffing budget, but mission budget for us is, as Kelly would say, difficult to understand because every budget we have is hopefully a mission budget. We're trying to achieve our mission. A vision budget is what we would fully attain if we could. And we don't fully know, we've never gone through this process, so this would be a great way to learn from the community what a vision budget looks like for the town of Littleton. So without further ado.
All right. You guys have any comments prior to that?
No.
All right. Interested citizens, feel free to come up and get the ball rolling.
Hi, folks.
I'm David Provo. I have 2 kids who have either been through the school system or in there now. My daughter graduated from Littleton High School last year, and my son is a sophomore this year. This meeting tonight is a very welcome coincidence, and I'll tell you why. Earlier this summer, I just happened to start asking around, quietly, low-key, just trying to gauge the temperature or the interest of this idea. And what I'm talking about is an increased investment in STEM education. Some people also call it STEAM. The A stands for art. Specifically, what I started asking about was forming a robotics team. And there is a related program in the earlier phases of the education system here for LEGO. Same FIRST organization. FIRST is the name of the organization. I personally have some exposure to these robotics programs. I know the skills, the wide range of skills that are required to make this thing work. And I also know that these tend to be community efforts. And I mean not just the school system, but the businesses, the parents, everyone. There's a great deal of value in these programs, in robotics competitions, because of the skills that are instilled in these kids, and the fact that a lot of universities, a lot of schools are starting to acknowledge that these skills and experiences are meaningful, and that these kids are highly motivated, and they may be highly motivated that are not necessarily fully captured by grades. So there's some important subtleties here. In the course of just asking around in the community, I was referred to Dr. Dan Hogan at the high school. And Dan, in my conversations with Dan, he has an excellent grasp of the requirements that would go into forming a robotics team and the level of skills that would need to be in place in order to make that happen successfully. And it turns out that we're not in a position to just start a robotics team this year. There is a level of competency and skills that need to be in place, and that needs to occur at an earlier age. And really, I'm referring to simple tool use, and I mean physical tools. I don't mean software tools. So I'm just here to advocate for increased STEM investment, because it's relevant, it's good. And I'm also just saying, hey, I started this process earlier this summer of just asking around to gauge community interest and support, and I've acquired a whole bunch of people that I still need to contact and have just casual, low-key conversations. What do you think? Is this a good idea? And it turns out there's no shortage of people to connect with. So I'm really just here to say, hey, this looks like it could be a good thing. I started out with one idea, that being a robotics team. Turns out there are a lot of other things that would have to happen first. That's perfectly okay. This is going to be a multi-year effort, and eventually the idea is that this becomes a permanent part of the curriculum throughout the school system. And if it happens that way, that's great. So those are my comments, and I hope it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we just catch your street address for the record?
2 Ernie's Drive.
Thank you.
Can I ask one? Are you suggesting a robotics class or more like the clubs? Because there used to be clubs my son's the same age as your daughter, and there was one when they were in middle school that kind of got disbanded, more due to funding than anything else.
Right.
But a lot of when they were going to the competitions, they were going up against teams that were taught in a class. So it was, apples and oranges on some of those, right?
So the ideal case is both. So my son's a sophomore, and part of what happened was, starting last spring, I started asking around to find out. I contacted first, just say, hey, where are the nearby teams, and which ones can accept a kid that's not from their school district, right? Because there are insurance ramifications. And so what I've learned is that most of them are club-based. Some of them, and I think Groton Dunstable is an example, they may be introducing a robotics class this year. And so, in a perfect world, we'd have both. And again, based on my own personal experience, I know for a fact that major corporations like IBM, Microsoft, Rolls-Royce Submarine. I bumped into the president of Rolls-Royce Submarine at one of these competitions, and I asked him, why are you guys here? And it turns out they sponsor multiple teams around the country. And I was like, well, you know, that's nice, but so what? And it turns out it's all about, they want to get name recognition. It's all about mind share. And they want to create a good impression on these kids. They want these kids to acquire valuable skills because they want highly motivated, highly talented kids to graduate from college, go to work for them. And those are high-paying jobs with good futures. So, you know, more than what you asked for, but that's the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Very good.
Brian Tarbox, Fletcher Lane. I love that idea. I think it's a great one. I do hope it doesn't come at the expense of the arts and the fine arts. I'll say I actually took my son out of the district 3 years ago specifically because foreign language isn't introduced until pretty late in the game in the district. And I know that's money, but my son goes to Montessori school where Spanish starts in kindergarten. And so he's had 3 years of Spanish now, and if he was in district, he wouldn't have Spanish for another 3 or 4 years. And the brain plasticity at the early ages makes it infinitely easier to learn the languages, early on. My goal is for my son to be on a robotics team and speak Spanish and Mandarin. So I'd love to see that. The other reason that we took my son out of the district was of the district's lack of response to bullying. We had so many conversations with my son where he would tell us about an incident at school and would say, talk to the parents, talk to the teachers, talk to the grown-ups. And he would say to me in tears, Dad, the adults don't do anything. Okay, that makes me mad, because y'all should do something. The kid shouldn't learn that the adults in the district don't do anything. So one of the things I'd like to see you guys do is some increased reporting. One of the things that has frustrated me is coming out of the district in the last few years, I've seen reports that say, Littleton has no drug problem. They did a sweep of the high school and found no drugs whatsoever. And we also live in this magic world where there's no alcohol problem, and where we have zero tolerance for bullying, but that's okay because there isn't any. I don't buy any of that. When the district puts out reports like that, you lose credibility. You just plain lose credibility. So I would like to see some accurate, believable statistics that you publish about what the alcohol rate usage is in the schools, what the drug use is in the school, and the rates of bullying. You, of course, have to obscure who did it, blah, blah, blah. But I want to see the rates by school of bullying and maybe some outcomes. Because if you did that, I could believe you a little bit. So, sorry if that's harsh, but when my kid comes back and says, I went to the adults, they didn't do anything over and over and over again, go to my happy place. Robotics.
Brian, you know that on the website we have the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that we do every 2 years with Emerson Hospital. And every 2 years we get a terrific presentation on youth risk behavior that talks about a lot of the stuff you just cited. So there's definitely information out there that does not claim by any stretch of the imagination that kids in Littleton don't use drugs, don't drink, and don't bully. That's recognized, it's quantified in that particular survey. That certainly isn't the be-all or end-all of quantifying that type of behavior. But to suggest that there's reports out there that we're saying there's no drinking or drugs by the children of Littleton or bullying.
I've seen reports on the web, and when the police do the sweep of the high school and they find absolutely nothing, you can't say those reports aren't out there. I've seen them.
No, I'm just saying that when the police go through the high school and they don't find drugs, that doesn't mean that the kids aren't doing drugs. It just means that they didn't bring drugs into the high school. We would know that based on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, that there are certainly kids in Littleton that do drugs or drink illicitly. We know that. That's acknowledged. It's readily acknowledged. And we're striving as a community and a school system to deal with it. To suggest otherwise is simply wrong.
Right, but when the police did that sweep, there was all kinds of pattings on the back between this committee and the selectmen of how isn't it great? And I feel like I was the only one who said, isn't this not the truth?
If I may. So it's certainly something that I know that we've talked about pretty much every year through youth risk, when the youth risk behavior survey comes up. And I know that that's one of the reports that I find the most interesting and one of the best looks into the schools, because as we all know, test scores aren't everything, but the youth risk behavior survey gives us a different lens to look at how our students are doing. And it's something that it's a work in progress for every district, and it is for us as well. I want to stay on topic here regarding the budget visioning. I'd be happy to sit down with you to talk about how we could increase visibility about the statistics or whatever the issue might be.
Absolutely.
But thank you for the comment, especially about the foreign language. I think that was good to talk about.
Hi, my name is Lisa Modica. I live on King Street, and my husband Jason and I have 5 kids who are either in the district now or are going to go through the district. So we're heavily invested in this district. And what I had to say had to piggyback on what he was saying, which is why I want to come up now. And that's on, in part, what he had stated about bullying. I do feel that the bullying issue and the way it's addressed varies widely in effectiveness from school to school in the district. So, for example, my personal experience with my daughter at Russell Street, it was handled very well. But we've had and heard from other families issues at the middle school and high school that are not handled appropriately, and where the blame for what is happening is placed on the victim as opposed to the person who's bullying. And that's been a real problem with many, many families. I've spoken to at least 4 families, and they all know of several others who have pulled their kids out of the district. And Littleton isn't that big of a place. So when you're talking about, I can quantify 9 families now who have pulled their kids out of the district because of either bullying or mental health issues, that's a problem. I, again, from personal experience and also from talking to other families, I really think that the district needs to invest heavily in training for its staff on how to deal with mental health issues for students. Because currently, it's patchwork at best, and sometimes the way those issues are being handled are detrimental to the student, and at times, unfortunately, and it hasn't happened because some of us parents are nice, but it's opened the district up to severe liability, which is not a situation that you want to be in, obviously. We need to serve all of our students equally. Some students need more investment, but we're a public school system, and we're required to do that. Not only are we required to do that, but we should do that. If we're a good school district, we need to serve all our students so that they can all rise to the same level. We can't have students who are suffering from mental illnesses or other disabilities that aren't being served properly, because that doesn't reflect well on us as a school district. Should I sit down or any questions?
Thank you. It's good feedback to have.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Selectmen, we have a selectman in the room, we have the chairman of the finance committee. Do you guys have any comments, or it's okay to say no? I'm just giving you the opportunity.
We'll take the okay. I personally came to listen this evening. Thank you.
If everyone in the room came to listen, I think this is what we're listening to.
All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody. I think Alex hit the nail on the head. We think about the budget all the time, and a lot of times we're right there in the weeds dealing with the things that, aren't as necessarily interesting or compelling to listen to as some of the things we heard tonight, transportation, electricity, HVAC, stuff like that. Stuff that needs to get done and needs to be funded, it's a significant part of how we take care of our kids day to day while we put them through, the curriculum. But we don't always take, I think, as good an opportunity, as Alex said, to think about the broader visions out there, the opportunities that we might have. And he said it too, we may think about it and we still may not be able to do anything in particular about it in a shorter time frame of a budget cycle. But if we have it on our piece of paper and we're talking about it, then it'll give us the opportunity to think about it in a longer term perspective. And I know that's discussions that we've had at our joint meetings with the selectmen and the FinCom as well, that the effort, even if it doesn't result in anything tangible on an immediate basis, is worthwhile. So I appreciate everybody coming out and thinking about that.
Do we want to do a last call?
Yep. David, you want to?
I don't have a question, but man, you guys should do this again.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, we should. The one thing that I would say is, I don't want to get up too high up on my soapbox, but when we've gone through difficult budget cycles, Alex hit it on the head earlier. He said, what happens is everybody shows up kind of late in the game after it's already over and a lot of the negotiation with the other boards and towns has already occurred. And we need feedback like this at these meetings more often, and this is a great way to solicit it. But we're always willing to listen. There's an open public session at the beginning and end of each meeting to come up and talk about those types of things. But just as importantly, you need to go talk to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. You can't just come and talk to us. If we had all the money, the whole pile, we would spend it and probably do a pretty good job of it with these guys telling us what kind of direction to take. It's just not the case. So it's a multi-headed beast. Then you need to get in front of each of the heads and really affect an opportunity for change and to make sure that we all understand what direction as a town we want to take. So I'll just take a minute to harp on that, which we've done in the past before. But you're right, we'll do it again, and people should feel free to come up to us any time and get the ball rolling from your end, but also push on the other entities as well. Would help.
And a lot of these ideas aren't budget specific, which is fine.
Right.
It's still a part of the vision for the district, which I think is helpful. But that doesn't mean that you're limited to this point in the process to come forward. I'm happy that people came when we sent out the call. I think if we sent out the call every time we had a meeting, though, it might be
exactly.
not quite the crowd.
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking of, in terms of our upcoming budget planning pieces there is, I think I sent an email to Steve Mark about how looking at our multi-year capital needs there, it might be interesting to look at the budget that way and maybe what would be the impact of phasing in certain different ideas as they come up there so we can understand, maybe it is something that maybe in 2 or 3 years could be scheduled into the budget, but
Right.
without like a projection that
Right.
we keep a running
Right.
tally of, it's a little hard to know, are these enduring ideas?
Right.
And then as we have like a next session there, if we had it calendarized, maybe in 5 years, we could address this type of issue.
Right.
Here, we could say, well, there's a new one, is that going to be layered in? Is that going to reprioritize? It's not necessarily at real time at that meeting, but it will allow us to sort of keep a running impact assessment of different initiatives that we might undertake.
And Brian had a good point too. It's like, yeah, STEM's a great idea, except we got to be careful at the expense of what. And any time we're thinking about adding something, it always has to be thought of as that. If we do that, it means we're not going to be able to do something else. And it would be good to know what those other things that we're not going to be able to do are.
Yeah, I didn't hear
at this point in
anybody
time.
say, take this off the list.
Right, exactly. And it's not necessarily strictly a question of, well, if we do more STEM at the expense of what on the school budget side, it could conceivably be at the expense of something else that we decide we can't do on the town side, or vice versa. If we do something on the town side, it may restrict our opportunity to do something on the school side. You want to add to that, Brian?
Well, since I'm not currently on any board, I can say the O word, because there are.
Which is override.
Yeah, override.
You didn't say.
I've been in finance so much that it didn't even occur to me. Oh, I need a life. But I think, in years, and it's always the third rail. You're not supposed to say the override word, but I think one of the problems has always been that overrides have been discussed so generically, like X big pile of money in general.
Hey, Brian, can I actually just
Oh,
do, sorry, do it there.
X big pile of
Thank
money
you.
in general, and people can sort of get behind that or not. But I think very specific targeted overrides, like, we've done stuff for highway, and you say, oh, I've got override for the highway. But, an override that's, if you presented, some override that said, let's get, a robotics club 3 years earlier in the grade levels for language arts, and let's have a third one, because it's always good to have a third one, and to do...
Full-day kindergarten.
What?
Full-day kindergarten.
Yes, full-day kindergarten. And you said, for those three things, and I'm going to pick a, random number, I don't know what the number is, so I won't pick a number, but if you said, town, we want an override of this specific amount for these specific programs, understanding that it's a black box budget and you can do whatever you want, but with the understanding, I think people could get behind that, and at least then we could have the debate. It's, we want to raise taxes in general. Terrible. We want to raise taxes to do these specific things. I think the town could get behind that. But so who's willing to touch the third rail to start the discussion? I'm not on a board, so I can say it. But FinCom isn't going to start it. Selectmen aren't going to start it. Maybe as part of a mission discussion, that falls on you guys to touch the third rail.
Very good points, and what I will say is, there's nothing that precludes that type of effort. It doesn't have to come from any board. I mean, we are a town meeting governance, so there are ways to do that. Now, obviously, you would want to, it's easy to do when you have the backing of boards and such,
Right.
so it's something, but it can certainly start in a number of ways.
Right, but I guess I just want to say, when we start saying it's a zero-sum game, if I want to do this, I have to do this, I want to do this, I have to do that, there's this third option. It's kind of unpleasant. No one wants to pay more taxes, unless it's going to something that you specifically care about.
Good point. Thank you.
I think the other reason why this is helpful to us is because I think there probably actually is a fourth option, and I think it's helpful for us to identify what some of those priorities are that you're talking about that are missed each year, that we don't have money to sort of appropriate in different ways. And we've seen in the past couple of years where there have been sort of creative ways to get things, if people want it badly enough, funded. In the high school, we now have the 3D printer. That was the effort of people saying, we want it badly enough, and we figure out a way to do it. So if we can find a way to identify and keep on a rolling basis these sort of other priorities, then maybe we can find, maybe, Dave, you mentioned that IBM sponsors things like this. Maybe if this becomes a big enough priority, we find a way to get our neighbors up the street to invest in having, a hometown robotics team. I think that there are often ways that if you, like Brian said, if people want something bad enough, then they'll either vote for an override or they'll do something to get it. So having these things out there so people every year when the budget comes around, they say, these are the things we're funding, and everyone remembers that there's this, traffic jam of things that we aren't able to get to each year. So having, sessions like this where people are throwing up, not just, for fun things, but things that would actually have a meaningful impact on people's learning, and getting them out there. And I think Daryl's idea of having a projection would be good, so we can see, we have ideas that are great ideas that might not even be able to merge into our budget 5 years from now. And so we can all sort of, the town can see what the impact of the budget going forward is.
Anything else
Does anyone have any last comments?
for tonight?
And we have a public comment session coming up in 20 minutes anyway, so. Was this helpful?
Just
I think so.
Oh, sorry.
Susan Harvey, 146 Mill Road. I'm a teacher here in the high school, and I remember, Chairman Fontanella, on the first day of school, you said, raise your hands if you live here in Littleton, and half that auditorium raised their hands. And we need money for the schools, there's no question about it, and I'm willing to touch that third rail. And I have to pay those taxes. And I suspect that the other teachers who live and work in this town would do the same thing, if we can identify exactly what we're doing. That's it.
Thank you. Was it half the room? I knew it was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot, right? It was surprising, wasn't it? I didn't know, I just,
It was not surprising, it's a good thing.
yeah, it is a great thing. I just didn't realize it was that many.
But that was a room full of faculty and staff?
Yeah, it was the faculty and staff, and we were waiting, we were in the cafeteria before the day started, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, you live here, and you live here, and you live here, and and then I said, I wonder exactly how many, so when we were all in the auditorium, and I said, can everybody raise their hand, and it was a lot. It was more than I thought it was gonna be.
That means we're dedicated.
Exactly,
to
that
the
was
town
kind of the
that we
point
live
we were
in,
trying to
and we're
make,
putting
right.
our kids through the system.
Right, exactly. All right, anything else on budget visioning? All right, I need some direction here. Should we recess to go at 7:30? I don't want to, I kind of feel like we should, right?
Yes, we should.
Yeah, because in case people are coming for particular.
I'm excited we're ahead of the agenda.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just, oh, it's so tempting to take advantage of that. I'm not going to be able to.
Sorry.
That's all right. All right, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, actually, just one comment.
Yes.
Because it's been irritating me on different.
You're not just trying to fill the time. This is a
No,
real
no,
comment.
no, no.
Okay.
I was going to say, sometimes I guess one other place that we can be making sure that we advocate for is at the state level. State is the one that sets our Chapter 70 funds, and they come up with some magic formula, which according to the MASC press release is going to change soon. But I mean, that's a significant source of funds there, that how the state allocates those funds to towns is another thing. I think having parents, teachers, and others in the community express their opinions to their elected officials during meetings with them would just, would also be helpful there, because, if they choose not to raise our Chapter 70 funds, it only relies on local taxes in order to introduce programs or to keep up with things there.
And it's not just Chapter 70, it's local aid in general. It's been
Right.
flat-lined for several years now, albeit, they're dealing with their
Right.
difficulties, not that they're doing it because they want to, but pressure that you can bring on your legislators to help them understand that we're not going to survive, not just Littleton, but the towns in general are going to really struggle if they don't open that up a little bit and
Right.
increase the funding.
Because I think they should receive just as much input on where the budget priorities are from the voters and the citizens, not just from us asking them that they're starving us with the limited funds.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn temporarily to 7:30?
So moved.
Second. All right, motion seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. All right, bye, Mrs. Harvey.
Bye.
She tried to run out right before we got started. Welcome back to, we're back in open session. We take a temporary recess. We had budgeted an hour for the budget visioning session, and it really only took about 35, 40 minutes. But we wanted to take a break just so that we could stay on schedule, the posted schedule, in case anybody was coming in to hear about something or talk about a particular issue that was reflected on the agenda. So we were back on open session at 7:30. And we've been called to order. Alice, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we have a consent agenda, minutes from September 10th, 2015, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Does anybody have any issues with the minutes or the oath to bills and payroll? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Very good. Interested citizens? Interested citizens? All right, we're good. We're going to go into recognition. Mr. Ben Clenchey.
I'm going to welcome Olivia to our school committee table. Olivia is our student council rep for this year. And impressive, Olivia has a report to give this evening, so
Excellent.
we're going to start with that.
All right, Olivia.
Thank you, Mr. Clenchey, for introducing me. I am a sophomore at the high school this year. I'm very excited to be here and help share the students' opinions. Most of the things going on right now are on the October school events list. But this week at the high school, which I'm going to start with because I'm there, so it's the best. We had Homecoming Spirit Week this week. So each day was a different theme, and then Friday we have the pep rally, the home football game, and then Saturday we have the homecoming dance, which everyone is very excited for. Then also coming up in October, we have SAT Boot Camp, which is on October 3rd and 4th. And then the PSATs, which are on October 14th.
Which is actually a weekday this time, right?
Yes.
And I was informed by somebody who lives in my house, he's going to get a free day off because his younger brother has to go take the PSAT in the building and the seniors aren't allowed to be there.
He's going to be engaging in educational activities off campus.
Oh, he didn't know what he said.
Yeah, I talked
All right, I'll put it.
The real story will come home soon.
Anything else, Olivia?
At the middle school, they started off the year with a variety of activities. They had 10-time X Game medalist Kevin Robinson come and talk to them. The sixth graders had a multimedia presentation from Campbell Productions. And sixth grade also went to Nature's Classroom for a team building day. Eighth grade has its field trip to Packmanadnock next Friday. And the week of October 13th through 16th is Eat Lunch with Your Child Week. Then Shaker Lane, which is where my younger sister goes to school right now. She just started kindergarten. They're doing a Spirit Day once a month, and so this month, or last month technically now, was school colors, so everyone wore blue and yellow. That's all I have.
That's great. Thank you. I have just a few recognitions. Our fall athletic teams are off to a tremendous start. We've had great weather for them. Unfortunately, it's going to change for the next few days, but nice sunny weather, warm weather for them to play. A second acknowledgement, we have a number of classes within our district that are taking part in Global Read Aloud. It begins on October 5th. I'm really excited about this because our kids will be connecting with students in classrooms throughout the world. I sent you an article on this earlier today, and it's really quite impressive how it's grown over the last 2 years. And so I'm really excited to hear the experiences of some of our students as they take part in this. Our LCTV news station will be kicking off their first show tomorrow, and should be on the air, I believe, at 11:30. And I also sent you an email to that effect and a schedule of when they're going to be presenting their programming. Again, another exciting venture. I had an opportunity to meet some of the news anchor team, so to speak, the other day, and they're doing a great job and they're having a lot of fun doing it. So it's really nice to see.
Is that being done in conjunction with, there's a high school class that's also being taught down at the LCTV too, right?
That is the class.
That is, so
Absolutely.
it's in conjunction with that?
Right. That their focus is to learn video and news production and actually produce a news show, I think almost every week. And they're going to cover events in the district and hopefully some events in the town as well.
Is the TV studio at the high school, is that completely defunct?
It is. Yes, it's no longer in existence, so to speak. When they did a major upgrade, they obviously the equipment became somewhat archaic.
Obsolete,
Yeah. So one other thing, I'm not going to really talk about it. Just I sent you another article this afternoon. It just reminds us of how we always need to keep safety at the forefront of what we do, and I'm just going to leave it at that. It was a humbling article to read. And that's it for my recognition.
All right. And then we have two presentations tonight. The first one is a summary of professional development for this coming school year. Oh, no, sorry, last year.
Last year.
Last year. And Dr. Jamie is going to take us through that.
Thank you. I'm actually glad that Mr. Mark is able to give you a screenshot of the document that I submitted to the school committee so that the parents and community members at home can get an idea of what was in the packet and hopefully take a look at this report. It is a fairly detailed report, and I want to emphasize that we went down to this level of detail not for typing practice. It was a deliberate endeavor to capture the level of detail and the breadth of coursework and conferences and workshops that our faculty are involved in on-site and pursuing in their time. As I stated in the beginning of the report, this report on professional development has a dual focus. The first is to report what goes on during the 12 early release professional development days. We hear this a lot. School committee has asked questions, what goes on during those half days, what goes on during those half days. It's a different schedule. Those schedules can be disruptive for parents and family. It's a lot of time spent on 12 early release, and time is money. So I wanted to emphasize what are the district trainings that are available and the site-based activities that go on in alignment with the school improvement planning. So basically, the lay of the land for the 12 early release days is you have some days that are district-based training. It's the same option on the menu. The district administration, we plan it with input from the principals, and every educator, specialist, teacher is involved in the same activities, although it may happen at the building. And then at the building level, there is a group of activities that are led by the principal, and those activities are aligned with the school's improvement planning. The site-based activities, where I enumerate what goes on in the site-based, school-based themes and activities. I've laid out what goes on at Littleton High School, Middle School, Russell Street, and Shaker Lane. And those are site-specific, faculty-led professional development. The faculty develop proposals for that PD. And the site-based PD always happens in the spring. If there's 12 early release days, the last 6 are the site-based sessions, which are developed and facilitated by the faculty. The sessions and the themes could run over 2 days, 4 sessions, or all 6 sessions. So in the principal's letters, when you see the principal say, our teachers were involved in X, Y, and Z, it's the site-specific professional development from January, February on. And so what I want to emphasize, the important takeaway from the list of school-based activities that you see here, at Littleton Middle School and Littleton High School, you saw that there was curriculum review and curriculum development in multiple disciplines. A number of significant courses and changes in the curriculum is developed because the educators in that department come together to develop and refine courses. There could be program development for special ed, program development involving a number of different faculty. The development and the analysis of DDMs. It is a state mandate where you're going to find the money or where you're going to find the time to develop rigorous, meaningful, authentic assessments that serve as district-determined measures. The venue for the development and analysis of DDMs in Littleton has largely been the early release days. We had a question earlier about, drug use, alcohol use, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Both Littleton Middle and Littleton High School, faculty and guidance were involved in extensive analysis and action planning on the YRBS. Mr. Pratt said that the YRBS presentation was one of the most interesting presentations. I would, encourage the community members who are concerned about alcohol use and drug use on the part of Littleton youth, not only to attend that presentation, but to attend the presentation by the faculty and administrators when they finish their analysis and action planning in the YRBS. And I thought that was a very impressive presentation last year. And you need to realize that much of that work was done during the early release sessions. And at all of the schools, Littleton, from the high school, middle school, Russell Street, and Shaker Lane, I would say that the phrase that the superintendent often used, best and next practice, captures many of the initiatives in the site-based PD. Then the next, if you scroll down, the next section of the typing, okay, it may all look like gobbledygook and a long list, but there were some takeaways from this list. It's a long, extensive list of graduate courses. These are the official names of the courses which Littleton faculty enrolled in and successfully completed. This coursework represents the nexus between the individual professionals' licensure needs, interests, and goals. The same thing with the list of, and if you scroll down more, the same thing goes for, keep on going, the workshops, seminars, and conferences. Superintendent Clinchy was instrumental in changing the tuition reimbursement program so that up to $1,000 of the $2,000 reimbursement that professional staff have per year could be dedicated to attendance at workshops, seminars, conferences, etc. And there are certain patterns in this list. At the top of the list, you see the organizations that represent the academic disciplines. National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, National Art Education Association. It's the professional organizations that represent, that for content area teachers. This is where they can learn best and next practice in a way that we cannot offer. And sometimes the stars align. Like last year, Dr. Branco was talking about initiatives. Dr. Branco and Dr. Harrington were talking about initiatives at Littleton High School and middle school when our staff attended the National Council of Teachers of Math. Okay, it was in Boston. So, you know, how lucky can you get? And so that year, last year, we had a number of Littleton faculty members who attended that conference. Then if you scroll down a little bit more on the list, there are professional organizations. And I would say that what's important, what's important in those, we had several conferences offered by MSSAA. That is the Massachusetts Secondary School Administrators Association. So there are multiple conferences and workshops that they offer. 2 years ago, when Littleton kicked off educator evaluation, the superintendent, the principals, myself, and curriculum coordinators attended a conference at MSSAA, and it was very important in furthering and grounding our practice. Another one on this list to look at is the MassQ conference. It is a very, very important conference for Littleton educators. Ask Mr. Mark. Every year he arranges for the purchase order and registration for Littleton educators being involved in that. So this is, and I would say to you, don't just look at the ones where they have the asterisks. They are important because it represents conferences where there are multiple Littleton educators that, you know, participated in those. But again, the list is long, and we, you know, felt it was important to demonstrate to you the wide range of practices. We're very fortunate to have a district that supports professional development and these multiple pathways for professional development, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alex, questions?
I hear whenever we hear from teachers or whenever we bump into teachers, I hear a lot of teachers say, like when we were talking about what to do with the half days, whether to move them to Fridays, whether to eliminate them. Anytime a teacher spoke to me about that, they said, whatever you do, don't limit my professional development. They love it. And looking at these workshops, seminars, and conferences, I know that I learned a lot from the MASC conference, and I don't even have a classroom to teach, which is probably for the benefit of this district. But it's such a great opportunity, and I'm really glad that we were able to do that in the contract. Was that 2 years ago now, where we were able to increase the amount of money that each teacher got for professional development and for conferences. So this is a good list to have. It definitely shows the breadth of what our teachers are doing. At some point, and this probably isn't it, I'd love to learn more about the depth of the conferences or the professional development. And we hear that throughout the year. But this is a lot of great information, so thank you.
Yeah, I like this presentation because I've been asked multiple times as well about professional development by people in the town, and it's one of those things where you hear the term, but you don't really know what we're spending all this money and time doing. So it's helpful to know what is going into that. So I like the presentation for that aspect. A couple of questions I had is, in light of like the conversations that we've had tonight and stuff like that, who is developing the on-site topics, and do we consider, you know, like the comments made about bullying and mental health issues and things like that, do those now or help instruct, you know, what we choose to do for?
And the principals can chime in. What I wrote in under the school-based themes and activities, the site-based sessions that are faculty-led.
Right.
Those are PD proposals that faculty members submit. Dr. Branco and I, and a lot of this is based on Dr. Branco's doctoral research. We co-chair the Professional Development Council, and we can bring these documents to school committee at some point if you would like, but we have developed proposal forms and expectations for the PD proposals that's for faculty members to develop. There is a process, and they develop a proposal. It's for 2, 4, or all 6 sessions. And then that proposal is reviewed, because it's site-specific. That proposal is reviewed by the principal of each school and their site-based PD team. So it's led by faculty members based on but it's not just, oh, what am I interested in? It's got to be aligned with the SIP.
Right.
So last year, there was the YRBS presentation.
Right.
You have, and it's every 2 years that the survey is administered, and then the next year is for research. So there was a team at the high school that did the YRBS analyses, and then there was a team at the middle school that similarly did the YRBS analyses for middle level data. I spoke with Dr. Detweiler the other day because at the last administrative council meeting, Superintendent Clenchy wanted us to review the schedule for professional development from September through June. So out of that came a discussion with Dr. Detweiler about the guidance counselors, K through 12, having a vertical meeting. So in answer to your question about bullying, mental health issues, that's something that the district is responding to. Also, at the last administrative council meeting, we did share conference opportunity through Teachers 21. Teachers 21 is a professional organization that our district has contracted with a number of times, and for the EdEval trainings and district determined measures trainings. And this October 22nd, there is a conference on developing a whole school response to dealing with students' anxiety issues. And a number of administrators, including myself, we're sending a team to that conference.
And then I just have one more, or I guess a two-part comment. The other thing, I remember mentioning this last year, I think it's helpful to have an emphasis on, especially when a faculty member goes to like one of these major conferences, to make sure that what they're learning at those is coming back. Because I know, at least for me, I've been to conferences before where I learned something, distilled down to how it applies to my colleagues. Yeah, no, or that you take out the parts that are really instructive and you share that with your colleagues. So making sure that the money goes and.
Well, I think our principals can share that too, because they've done different things in each of their schools that has followed.
Yeah, I know there have been examples of people coming back and then teaching things on that. And then one more thing, so do faculty members get, is there an incentive, I know for like graduate degrees, but is there incentives for taking professional development?
Professional development or graduate coursework?
Well, I guess both. The answer was right. I think you're saying that.
I can answer that. There is an incentive. If it's a graduate course, they can move up on their scale in a horizontal fashion in terms of certification or qualification. Our staff, professional staff, is recertified every 5 years, and they can use both graduate courses and conferences as long as they meet the criteria for what they call PDPs. So that's beneficial to them as well. We do use train-the-trainer model, which means our teachers do come back and talk either in curriculum teams or department teams about what they've learned within the conferences. The question about social and emotional learning, it's a simple yes. There are three kinds of professional development. There's district professional development, professional development, and individual professional development. All of those are tied into our strategic plan and our school SIPs. And I have an opportunity as a superintendent to have input into all of them.
So the point of my last question was, do we take, I see we have the tuition reimbursements and things like that, but is there a way for teachers to take like edX courses or one of those courses where it's a free program that ends up with a certificate sometimes if you complete it?
We have Littleton University credits, and that could be applied to Littleton University credits, which would be allowed for horizontal movement on the grid. And whether or not they would apply for research would really depend on the content.
Well, so that would be something to look at, instead of spending $2,000 for somebody, if they're taking a free course, then you have money that you're saving to go into some of the, incentive program kind of thing.
It's a good point.
That is a good point.
Do you mind, I'd like to respond to the social emotional piece. The superintendent's talked a lot about the social emotional learning aspect and, creating well-rounded citizens and youth. And based on some of the conversations we've heard tonight, I think it's important to point out that we had 2 early release days already that were actually controlled by the school level, and at the middle school particularly, that all of that time was done redeveloping our advisory units for this current school year. So our advisory model is based on the research-based methodologies of Second Step, and then over time, we've realized that Second Step is pretty prescriptive and in the box and doesn't always reflect who Littleton is and isn't. So we've taken the themes of Second Step and we've created our own Littleton lessons and units that are tied to our 4 core values of respect, responsibility, integrity, and accountability. And that's our big push. So the past 2 early release days, the middle school staff, everyone who has an advisory has spent those 2 days creating their individual lessons for the weekly advisories that meet on Monday, starting in 2 weeks. And people made their comments tonight, and that's some of the stuff that we address. We address not just the concept of bullying, but being good citizens.
Right.
Because we talk about citizenship at the middle school, and it's not about the isolated definition of bullying. It's really about being a good neighbor and a good citizen.
And I like that you talk about it all the time, your idea, your notion that you got to be who you are online as you are in real life. Most people may not think of that as traditional bullying, but it all means the same thing.
Our librarian, Ms. Anstis, has been working independently on those days on her digital citizenship program, and once that kicks off in October, I will send that information out because I'd love to have people come observe that program. This is our first time ever having that embedded in the school day. So students are going to rotate through 6 digital citizenship classes a year tied to our advisories. So it's time and money well spent that impacts kids.
No, I really appreciate this presentation, because like many others get questions, what do we do with the half-days? And I think this is a nice, good summary. It'd be good if we have it so it's readily sendable to folks. Sure. It's very useful, and then, so I appreciate the presentation. So rather than necessarily waiting till October of next year, if we already have a projected agenda of preliminary things, it'd be nice to see that also.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
For this year.
For this year.
Stuff that's already going on for this year.
You already have a tentative plan for this year,
Right.
rather than waiting till next year.
To hear
We could
about
maybe
it.
share just the list, not necessarily the content of it, but just kind of like the topics would be useful
Yeah, that
for
would
us
be
to
good.
know.
Sure.
We can do that.
What we could do is, at the mid-year point, when the district and school-based sessions are completed, before the individual faculty-led sessions begin, at that mid-year juncture, we can give you a report on what has gone on in each school.
So what I want to emphasize, I'm not necessarily looking for a report. If you already had 2 sessions, people don't know what's already happening there. So I mean, part of it is just to say, this is what we're planning on coming. I'm not asking you to give me an assessment of how you've done it there, just so I can say,
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
we're already planning on talking about these topics here,
Right.
versus you guys got your head in the sand and you don't know what is.
So we can say, for example, like in December 11th, the middle school is going to actually have a session on.
So if I upped my Twitter followers, you'd know that, because I tweeted it all out.
Well, I was going to say, my expectation is that The principals put it in their weekly newsletters.
Right.
And they all have Twitter accounts, so they put it on Twitter as well. So, I mean, that information is going out. If you want to formalize a school committee meeting, we can certainly do that. But, check my website, my Twitter account.
You guys are-
But it's out there, but again, it doesn't hurt if we give you a sheet of paper showing you where we're going in terms of direction. That's not hard to do.
Thank you.
I think the professional development and everything is great. The one thing I had a question on is, do we keep track of does everyone know the other teachers that went to which conferences, and they can share enough information? Because one of the things that I find would be nice in my own life, things is it would be nice to know who the expert is or who's already been there, so you can track it. It's incredibly difficult if you're not maintaining it to know, except through the word of mouth. And the other thing would be nice is if, part of the requirement of going to these conferences or whatever is just have them fill out an evaluation form saying, this is what we learned at the conference, so that everyone can know that it was worthwhile to go to or it wasn't worthwhile to go to, and you get better information sharing.
Those are both good points, and we've done both things sort of more anecdotal than part of a regular routine. I will say that most of the principals we've discussed at the administrative table, the principals allow times during their faculty meetings where folks that have gone out to conferences make a report to the faculty in general. I know Dr. Brinkle has that as one of the requirements at the middle school, and Mr. Baziglo has done that with folks going out to certain responsive classroom activities. So that is something to keep in mind. There has been word of mouth about certain conferences and workshops. And usually, and I know that's happened because usually I have always, without question, when the faculty submit the required documentation for a workshop, as long as it's, sponsored by a professional organization or through a reputable higher ed institution, I always sign them. I would say in all the years I've been here, but the 2 times that I have not signed a conference workshop is when word of mouth has gotten back to me or a principal that a certain workshop by a collaborative, not too far down the road, was not worth it. Was very cursory overview, not substantive. And so then it was an occasion for a dialogue between myself and the faculty member, and I said, I don't think your time is better spent finding, look for this topic somewhere else.
We, actually, I just had a conversation about what you were talking about a few days ago. We are recognizing in-district experts more and more in our full-day PD day, which is coming up. We're running that entire day with in-house staff. So we're moving more to that kind of model. It's a great comment.
I mean, like in my office, they just tag people, right? You can say, I'm interested in this, or I've done this, or whatever. So you can go, and if you know the right tags, you can figure out who's an expert or who's done what and find out. But it's an idea.
And I think that's, from my perspective, I do think that's generational. I think the workplace, you represent a generation in a workplace that you expect to be, well, you're younger. You work and you expect to interact with others and collaborate and find out, what's going on. Our young faculty who come in, when they're interviewing us, meantime, we're not just interviewing them, what teams do I work with? When I started teaching, you're in your classroom and you didn't deal with any of the other faculty members. So I think that's an important dynamic to maintain, that professional collaboration.
Yep.
And for the record, we're right on schedule.
Well, hold on, we're not quite done yet. Libby, do you have any comments on professional development?
It sounded slightly like there's some concern of things being learned at conferences being shared with other teachers. I do 2 languages at the high school, Latin and Spanish. and Mrs. Kelly, who's the Latin teacher at the high school. There's things that she's learned there, and then I've seen in some of my other classes, like in Spanish or in health class with Miss
Thank
Perry.
you.
That's great.
Thank you. It's like I had a plant.
We have,
How much are they paying you?
we have Mike Gill and President of the LA with us. Mike, do you have any comments about professional development you'd like to?
One thing I'd just add, which isn't to say, like, certainly the district. Use the microphone. I guess all I would say is the teachers very much appreciate the time that we do have available for some of the sort of teacher-driven or teacher-initiated proposals, because there are times when you have a building or an entire district where teachers really deal with a wide variety of students, a wide variety of disciplines, and so it's important, I think, to maintain that time where professional development can really be tailored to a particular grade level or something like that. So we really do appreciate the time where teachers have a voice in constructing what happens during that portion of the day.
Thank you. The only comments I'll make is that I think we've answered in a very substantive way what goes on in the current format of professional development. I'm sure all of us, given an opportunity, would say there's a better framework, that more time available, more money available to do it even better. But I think given the way it's constructed, and it's certainly not, Littleton's not the only district that does it this way, this is kind of the lay of the land, I think we can see that every effort is being made to make this meaningful, substantive, broad, covering a lot of different areas. I like the idea that there's 3 different levels of district, building and even, teacher-wise or grade-wise. I think that covers a lot. Obviously, you see this much and you say, gee, wouldn't it be wonderful we could do even more, because you can see what we're capable of and what the staff is capable of. I think we're just dealing with the constraints that we have to deal with and making the most out of it, so I appreciate that. So thank you. All right. Next one is the high school handbook. Dr. Harrington's going to give us an overview of the course offerings at the high school. I don't like this one because I always wish I could go back to high school after I hear this stuff.
This is a brief presentation, and more of, I think, an open dialogue about what the course offerings are at the high school. A lot of you, as parents of high school students, are quite familiar with our offerings and have been to our back-to-school nights. But for the general audience watching and listening in, they may hear something new, particularly for if their students are at the younger grade levels. I did bring with me tonight a hard copy of our school profile. You have one in your packet electronically, but I'll just pass it around so you light in mind. See, here you go, just pass that. No. Thanks. Just a good reference document, particularly on the back, as our course titles and levels are broken down. This is something we send out to colleges and share with parents of incoming students, as well as with parents who are interested in moving to town. Just today, I met a gentleman from India who's been looking at Littleton High School and seriously considering it all as far away as India, as he's preparing for a job transfer here, and he's scouting school districts and towns in which to reside. And he was very impressed for such a small high school of the breadth of offerings. And Alex, you were mentioning breadth and depth just a little while ago. I think you could attest as an alumnus that there's also a significant amount of depth in some of the courses that you take at the high school. But we are proud of the fact that for a school of about 455 students, that we can offer all the wide range of levels from AP to the most supported classes, self-contained alternative classes where students are really just receiving foundational skills and knowledge development and special education. So we have lots and lots to offer. I'll start off tonight with just highlighting some partnerships, one of which you've already heard about. The superintendent, as well as school committee member Mike Mazzoni, were instrumental in bringing about a partnership with Umass Lowell for a new nano engineering course for LHS students. We have about 7 students at this point in time participating in this, and they went to Umass Lowell today, I think for the 2nd or 3rd time, to visit the Nano Engineering Center there. I should be getting an update probably next week from the professor as to how our class of students are doing over there. And she also travels with a TA to the high school on Tuesdays. There's a Tuesday-Thursday offering. We're very excited about that partnership, and we're also appreciative of the school committee working with families to help finance that offering and make it affordable for students. Students, as I mentioned, have access to the Umass Engineering Center and Lab, which is quite a coup for our students at such a young age. The bulk of our students actually participating this year are juniors, and we're kind of intrigued by that. That's just the way it worked out. We did try to recruit lots and lots of seniors, but they were already booked with a lot of course offerings and commitments for the year. And some of the juniors, for whatever reason, had a little more flexibility to take this course. Another partnership that we're proud to announce, and was mentioned earlier by Darrell and the superintendent, is the partnership we have with LCTV. Littleton Cable Television provides an opportunity for students to learn TV production in a state-of-the-art TV studio. It's a far cry from what you might have experienced, Mike, if you were in that course back in the room next to the Kiva, where all the wires were all connected and there was that green board.
Yeah.
That's all gone. And that room that you were asking about has now been converted to a wonderful guidance seminar room. It's dedicated for our guidance counselors to teach classes. That's a unique model that you might be interested in hearing about at a later date in the year from our guidance counselors. Our guidance counselors actually group students and teach them all at once. It's a very efficient and effective model for where students can actually learn from each other about the college application admissions process. So the guidance seminar room is also in place and now it's in place for all 4 grade levels, where we have students, they're introduced to Naviance now in 9th grade. I think this is the first year they're going to kick that off. I'm not sure if Olivia's had Naviance training. The sophomores will have guidance seminar this year at some point. The students are taken from study halls, or what we call academic support centers, during the day if they have them, and they're grouped for instruction in the whole, according to the ASCA model, which is the American School Councils Association curriculum model. So that's been very effective for us, particularly as students are looking at more and more competitive colleges to really teach them in an efficient and effective way. We also have a number of new courses available to students this year. AP Statistics has joined, and we're very happy about that. There's a lot of demand for that, and there's been a lot of interest. Our Danica Johnston, who's the instructor, has been preparing students at the AP level within her honors class, and lots of our students over the last 2 to 3 years would take the AP Stats test and do quite well. But now our expectations have been raised, and we expect now with a new set of textbooks that are aligned with the College Board and the College Board curriculum. We should be in good shape, and we're expecting good results in the AP Statistics course. We also have a Latin 5 course. I know you spoke highly of Mrs. Kelly just a minute ago. Mrs. Kelly teaches that class. She's also our World Language Curriculum Coordinator, and she's hoping at some point, she has the class of students interested, and there's a lot of parent sentiment in favor of this, to convert that course to an AP Latin class. That's pretty amazing for such a small school that we could offer that. But we have, in the projections, 15 to 20 students interested in AP Latin. And I've met with parents as far back as 2 years ago to talk about getting prepared to make this offering for their students. Back when they were freshmen and sophomores, they were very interested in having this offering. I'm not sure if Olivia's interested, but I know that there are a number of students who are. We also have the Computer Science Principles course offering, which is a result of our partnership with code.org. Big initiative a few years ago, both at the middle school and high school, to get coding and computer science courses into schools. It's an international endeavor, and we at Littleton, I think it was actually a whole district initiative, pre-K, if not K to 12, to have a day of code back in, I forget the year exactly, it was 2 or 3 years ago, but it was a day of code in December. And from that, we learned more about the whole organization and how we could adopt their curriculum. We started last year or 2 years ago with exploring computer science, and now we have computer science principles, which, according to our partnership agreement with code.org, will eventually be an advanced placement course. That will have AP designation. It's not there yet, but that is part of the plan. We have, for students who have significant academic needs and struggles, we have a Foundations of Biology course offering this year. That's part of our two-year model that we put in sync for students who needed a little extra support preparation for not only the biology or science MCAS test, but also just more time to just develop their academic skills and knowledge, and aside from the course. That's been a wonderful offering, along with, in tandem with our integrated science course that we introduced last year. We have a new topics and wellness course that was made possible through the hiring of a physical education teacher this past year. It's been well received. The group of students in that course, already in the first month of school, are contributing significantly to the positive school climate with educating students and staff about all kinds of healthy initiatives. They've taken over one of the main display cases in the main lobby of the high school. We're happy with that, and we're very grateful to the wellness coordinator and teacher of that course, Mrs. Perry, for bringing that course to the high school. We also have a new computer animation and 3D modeling course. That's a new offering that I'm still learning a lot about. It's kind of a mystery to me in terms of the content. I look forward to observing the class throughout the year and getting to be more familiar with the content. But that was a course that had a significant student and interest as well as parent interest. In fact, I received a letter last year requesting that we support the course and make sure that it was in the program of studies. I think it was upwards of 20 to 30 parents requesting that course. So that's now a part of the high school curriculum as an elective in the arts and technology course department. We don't have it as an official department, but it's sort of its entity unto itself. We also have AP Art History has returned to the high school after a 2-year hiatus. That's made possible by a very versatile teacher who can teach ceramics, painting, and drawing. She can teach yoga, and she teaches AP Art History, the amazing Miss Hosfeld. And then we also saw a return this year of a lit film elective for students. That was popular, formerly taught by Mr. Pescucci. You may have had him take, but that's now taught by Mrs. Allison this year, or it is this year. And that's a course that students certainly enjoy in their studies. That highlights a number of the new courses. We are trying to make strides with offering more internships and work-study possibilities for students in the community. This year, we have, I believe at last count, it was about 6 students already participating in work-study or internships in the local area. We're looking to expand upon that in the near future. We really want to see the growth of that in the practical applications, getting kids into the field, learning from mentors, and even doing some career shadowing, career exploration in the process, and determining if what they think they're interested in really is what they're interested in by having an experience there in high school before they delve into it in college and invest lots of money and study in it. So that's something that has been well received, particularly for students who are well on their way in their senior year to fulfilling graduation requirements and want to get out in the afternoon and be in the field and get in a space where they can move and walk around and be in. In some cases, they're working in the outdoors. And so, last year we had a student work with a local contractor. That was his interest. He knew exactly what he went off to school and college to study construction management. So that was a fabulous opportunity for him. Yep.
On the PD list that I gave you earlier, with the faculty proposals, under the high school program development, this work study was one of them. So, and here you see how it's actualized.
Yeah. And we still have work to do there in developing that program so that it's really, it's even a larger and more successful program. Lastly, I think I'll finish with a recognition and a thanks for the school committee support of our alternative credit option, which we proposed to the Department of Education, or Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, seems like a few years ago now, but it was just last year. And we did get approval for that. It's made possible lots of flexibility within student schedules for student athletes who want to take they want to count a sport as for credit rather than take a PE class. That's been helpful. it's held in a pilot way, which we'll report out later in the year. There are a few students who have opted to, who are really, one that stands out is a dancer who has a young woman who spends lots of hours in the early evenings dancing. And in some cases, more hours than our students spend in a season of athletics. And she wanted to have some flexibility during her day to work on her schoolwork and do what she loves at night. And we don't have a dance studio at the high school, and so that's created flexibility and opportunity for her. The other thing with the I want to mention and thank the school committee for, as well as the superintendent, is in terms of the support for physical education, is with the new hiring, is it's allowed for a revamping of some of our coursework. With the Fit for Life course and the strength and conditioning courses. Mr. Lynn, who is our athletic director and physical educator, has, I think, sent an email to the superintendent and myself earlier this year, thanking us for making this possible because he feels a newfound passion for teaching because he can really take kids and develop programs with his strength and conditioning course that he hasn't been able to do in years. And his program is really solid. Actually, took a copy of it so I could use. And so I'm going to hopefully start that. Intended to start it with a kickoff in October. It didn't start today, but it will start in October.
You know, we talk about age appropriate.
Yes.
You know, you
It
might
can be
just-
adapted for ages.
Just saying, you might want to make sure that what you're doing is age appropriate.
Yes, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, I think he's got all kinds of different models or mottos in his coursework. But it's it's a whole booklet he's created for his course. I think as a Fontanella or two, I think he has that booklet.
It's adversely affecting my grocery bill, I know that.
So that about sums it up for me tonight. I'll be happy to entertain questions and go back and forth. But a lot of what I've said is probably stuff you know in terms of our course offerings, but the general public may not be aware of it. Mike, I don't think I've left out any science courses, just on your behalf. I know you have some, we've talked over the years about developing an advanced chemistry course at some point, and we'll see where we go with that. But there's only so many hours in the day between 7:25 or 7:30 and 1:56 when the students are dismissed. And we know that we pack a lot in, and so we have to sort of manage courses. In some cases, we have to alternate them by years. We find that effective. We give kids a couple opportunities maybe before they finish high school to take an offering, but there are some courses we want to sequence in alternate years to give that breadth of offering.
So I guess in summary, we have 81 courses inclusive of our Tier 4 special education program. VHS, we have 25 seats, so another 25 courses. So we're running 106 courses within a high school of 450 students.
How many without the SPED included?
It would be 105.
Curriculum skills class, or?
Yeah, yeah. I was counting that as one class. I guess the only other thing, our internship does expand to the Tier 4 special education program as well. So that's really, I'm personally really excited about that our students are going to be going out into our community and into various businesses and doing some internships with them.
And I was a little bit remiss. I need to acknowledge one thing that we have coming up. I just met with a gentleman from a local financial services firm, this was just last week, to solidify plans to offer, he's going to teach it on a voluntary basis, a financial literacy seminar in the spring to seniors. And so we're very happy about that. It's going to give us a chance to start the course and see where it goes. There'll be a limited enrollment. There's no question about that. He has to teach at a very defined period in the morning. And that's what happens when you have experts come in from the outside who have to fit it into their schedule too. It's only one period during the day. And we're projecting that we could have 15 to 20 students, though, in that class in the spring semester, which we're hoping for. It's definitely capped at 25. So that's a course offering. That's something to look forward to. I did mention that at the back-to-school night. And one other thing, just in terms of special education, we have a renovated kitchen area that's just about complete.
Close.
Yeah, I was just checking it out today. It's next to the CAF, and it's available for special ed students or special needs students who will learn cooking, vocational, and home life skills. And that's a wonderful offering. That whole space, the old teacher's lounge, has been totally, or teacher's lunchroom, as they used to call it, has been totally transformed into a kitchen setting. And I'm hearing that they might invite the school committee for lunch once they're up and running.
I'll bring you pictures when it's completed.
Mr. Olivia, do you have any comments, or?
Some of this I didn't actually know about, mainly because for high school, when the end of the year comes, we get recommended each course. So yes, you can dive in and like pick your art credit or gym credit if you're doing that, but you don't really have a ton of time or opportunity to really see all of the programs. And like my whole grade has been like, what are they building in there? Are they like redoing the like teacher room?
Oh, yeah, tricking it out for the teachers, absolutely.
The lounge.
I better announce that at lunch tomorrow. What are we doing in there?
Mark, any thoughts?
It's kind of a mystery, I guess. No one's asked.
I just had two, can you talk a little bit more about where the interns are being placed? I mean, are they, what kind of?
They're businesses and organizations. I don't have the specifics. We did get just a request, I think it came in this week, for a local business that would like an intern. It's been usually the other way around, where we've been trying to contact organizations and trying to establish those partnerships. We do have some students who work with, one is working with something in the trades. I'm not sure exactly what the company is. We have two students who are going to be over here at the police station as interns. They are interested in, they've already decided, as part of their career exploration, that they want to be police officers, so they'll get a first-hand look at it. We think we can do something similar to that with the fire department in the future. But there's and then we did, like I mentioned, the contracting business last year. There's one it just escaped me right now.
I mean, I think that you talked about how it's a kind of a new effort and it's underway. It'd probably be a good idea if we could just, at some point, when you get your arms around a little bit more, to get an update on what it entails, but also some background on the assurances we're getting about the educational quality, safety, security, all those types of things, just so that, if questions are being asked, we will be able to answer them. So we can just tag that on and more in depth, a different type of presentation.
I think that's the next step for us in terms of, before we get really expansive with it, is to make sure all those things have been checked off.
Right.
Most of the stuff that we're doing right now is based around the relationships we already have with the individuals, trusting relationships, family connections, so the families are very much on board with it.
Right.
So hasn't been a challenge for us. But once the school starts to get involved, it's very prudent for us that it would be wise to check that out.
There's opportunity, but there's risk as always, but I think it's definitely worthwhile.
I had two other quick things. Do we have a general feel for how the alternative credit is being accepted or used by the students?
Yeah, I knew that was going to come up, the collection of that data and the reporting of that data, and that's something we need to gather. It's still coming in, so with the first month of school underway. So that's something we can gather for you and report back. I did just remember that one of the companies is an optician, is a local optician, who owns several businesses in there. He wanted an intern, and he got one. So,
and my other question was
family connection there.
Do we have any kids taking advantage of dual enrollment, or are we doing anything along those lines?
Yep, we are looking at expanding that a little bit in some ways with Middlesex Community College. We have the most striking one is the one I mentioned, where the 7 students taking the Umass Nano Engineering course are getting both college credit and high school credit. I'd have to check with our guidance counselors on what students who are taking courses at Mount Wachusett or Middlesex Community College. Those are the two that, in terms of community college, where students tend to enroll most often.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one thing, and is actually touching on something somebody brought up earlier about hands-on use of tools and other pieces there. And obviously, Massachusetts, several years ago, decided to go with the tech high school approach, and almost all of the public schools spun out all of those types of activities to them. Is that something that could be explored, though, in terms of some kind of teacher sharing or other things there, rather than us developing our own curriculum or coursework there? It just seems like that might be an opportunity to explore. Not that there's anything there, on it to,
It's-
leverage something that
Yeah.
they may have in place that,
It's something that I've started to have conversations about very delicately at this point in time, because in Massachusetts, there's been a push years ago to develop separate entities. You know how I feel about that with my own philosophies and experience. We developed our own tech high school in my last district with 12 other districts, and our students were homebound, and we had half-day programs that we bused our kids to. So our kids took the core subject with us, and then we would send them to the tech for various specialties. Massachusetts, I don't know, I don't think it's there yet because of the separate entity structure, but I would like to become a little more informed in terms of whether or not they would be interested in doing something.
I just encourage it as we look at partnerships at the university level, looking at even partnerships at the school level, even other districts, high schools, or even, like I said, I wouldn't say others, I include tech high school in that same category. Whether it's cost effective or not, it just seems that they were set up to develop those skills. And it would seem almost redundant for us to start from
Right
scratch.
now, the only
and
model is
developing
either all in one way or all in the other, and why can't there be a hybrid type of
Exactly.
opportunity?
I would love to see that.
That's an interesting point.
Just something to encourage exploring. And then I'll hold it to the budget discussion. There was another comment I had, but I'll hold that till we get to budget subcommittee.
I look forward to it. Mike?
Well said.
Alex?
Yeah. Couple things. Firstly, on the robotics question, and working with the Schcmte Tech, even if it's just an after-school program, they might, if we're interested in starting a robotics team and had a little bit of money, maybe a couple $1,000s, if that, we could reach out and say, do you have any interest? Because that could build a critical mass of students to make it more feasible. We have those kinds of conversations when it comes to athletics.
Yes,
we work with Bromfield, we work with Westford Academy in our sports teams. We could do that probably in some after-school programs as well that were extracurriculars in that way. My comments are sort of tied together, and I really start with the alternative credit option, which I think is great. And this is something that we adopted under pressure from the state review. They kind of set compliance on the physical education requirement and said, all right, we're going to have to fix this with limited resources, and those sort of pressures created the alternative credit option, which I think we've been talking about before, but it sort of gave us the final push into letting us make it happen, which I think is great for a number of reasons. But there were concerns when we discussed this back in January, I think, about how much admin time, paperwork for you, for Virginia Cormier, for the guidance team, for the athletic director. Has that been overwhelming from the start of the school year? Has it been okay?
It's been absolutely fine, and the reason why is because the school committee and superintendent supported the addition of a half-time secretary at the high school. That has made such a huge difference. She's a wonderful person who greets everybody when you first arrive to the high school. So you're sitting right up front. She does there's a new person who checks in for attendance. That freed up Mrs. Cormier, who you remember very well from high school, and you do too, to be able to focus on guidance. And now we feel that the guidance department is getting a much higher level of service. And just so people may not have awareness of the history of that, that was a position that was eliminated years ago, and we've been trying to restore for, I think, at least 10 years. So I'm very grateful for that. We can see a really significant difference just in terms of Mrs. Dion's workload, Mrs. Cormier's workload. And so we've been able, Mrs. Cormier has taken on those responsibilities to manage the alternative credit option, because she manages all our transcript records anyway.
It makes sense, because that way it's all in one.
All in one place.
So the addition of that part-time individual was on the basis of our alternative, there it is, credit program. So that was the reason why we went ahead with that.
That's great, because there have been so many different initiatives, whether state-based or coming from us, that might be very great, but if you don't have the time to
Personnel
both
manage it.
implement them and then run the school as you normally would, it would create problems. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Not an issue. And then the flexibility it creates for the students, not just in terms of opening up maybe another AP class for a student who's taking, trying to do a couple of AP classes, but also has to do gym, even though they do 3 sports during the school year, that student has more flexibility, and that's sort of, when we were discussing this in January, was the mindset we were taking. But it's also exciting to see us talking about the internships, because those are going to be more possible when students have more flexibility. The student who's dancing, who now has a little more time during the school day to study and to catch her breath if she's doing a lot of intense classes, that's really, really healthy. And I think the whole change that we've been seeing in the school district is a move towards healthier education systems. Because we're a rigorous school. We have a lot of rigorous classes. And so for a lot of students, we heard earlier tonight, that can be tough. So the addition of the yoga class, for example, and that free time, and letting students embrace dancing again as both a way of getting the physical education done, but also as a self-care piece, I think is very important. In just a lifestyle way, I think we're having the right conversations with kids about that. On the internship piece, I agree that as we go forward, it'd be great to learn more about where they're going, what they're learning, that kind of thing. But anecdotally, I want to say that I did an internship during my senior year of high school, made possible because of the flexibility I had, because I was doing dual enrollment. So that sort of this added flexibility will probably help more students do that. And I was doing an internship at the State House, where I now work full-time. So that's 3-year turnaround.
That was your introduction to the whole process, right? Yeah.
And that set me on this path where I'm on now, and you all have to deal with me. But it was really valuable for me, and I hope it's valuable for other students as well. And sometimes a student will do an internship and they'll say, you know what, this isn't for me. And they won't realize that it was valuable, but that knowledge might help them avoid going further down that road the wrong way in the future. So that's pretty good. I'm just glad that we're having that conversation. My one question, I don't know if I missed this, did you talk about the RADS class at all? Or is that new, or is that from last year?
RADS, RAD?
The RAD, yeah.
Oh, the rape aggression
defense. Is
system.
that a new class?
That's a class that's been with us for a couple of years now. And it's not happening this year because the instructor is on maternity leave. But it is a course that has been very popular offering with our young women at the school. It's taught in partnership, and made possible actually through the Littleton Police Department, who provide the instructor. Ashley Brooks, who was our SRO, a school resource officer last year, provide the instruction. And it had really good reviews. We bring it back when the instructor comes back. So it's been a good offering for our kids. Popular with a lot of parents and the young women.
And do we have a new SRO?
Mike Crory is our SRO this year.
Great.
Yep. He's a detective with the Littleton Police, and he's doing great work so far.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so moving on to old business. A reminder, we're going to hold a working session on school committee goal development at the next meeting. Again, we're going to start early. We'll do that from 6:30 to 7. So if you haven't already started preparing, start. And if you have started, continue.
Sounds good.
Any questions or issues on that? Superintendent's report.
It's hard to believe that the MASC conference is around the corner. And tonight I'm requesting that you appoint a district delegate to attend the meeting to vote on various referendums. And also encourage you, if you have time, to come on down and experience part of the conference. Alex was able to come down last year, and it was great to have a school committee along with me, a member along with me. And I think Alex really enjoyed himself. There's a lot of good opportunities to learn some new things and also connect with other people. So having said that, I'm looking obviously for somebody to volunteer again to be the school committee delegate.
Is there anybody, Alex went last year, so before I ask Alex if he wants to go again, I'll offer it to anybody else who's interested. I can't go, I'm tied up.
I would love to. I can't go this year, though.
I can't go this year.
I'd have to see my schedule. I've got to check it here, but I mean, I went a couple of years in a row, so I can let other people have the opportunity.
I haven't checked my schedule to say whether I could go or not.
Do you have interest in going, or?
I could invite
Alex, do you want to go again? I mean, can you go again?
I can go again.
Do you want to go again?
I would like to go again.
All right. How did we do it last year? It's at the Cape, right?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, we can send more than one, can't we? if we
Send
want
as
to?
many as you want.
Okay, so I don't think it precludes anybody else from going, but let's, if you know you can go and you want to go, let's go ahead and have you go.
Okay.
And
I was
then-
going to defer to Daryl because
Right.
he's done it more years than I have,
Right.
and if he wanted to do the
But Mark,
delegate,
again,
yeah.
if you want to go,
I'll talk
definitely,
to
yeah,
them.
exactly, figure that out.
We
And
do.
it doesn't have to be an all-in thing either. You can pick and choose off the schedule what you want. If you feel it's something that's worth a one-day rundown, that's up to you guys.
We do need to designate one school committee member as a delegate, and it does require a vote.
Okay. All right.
Motion to approve Alex as the school committee delegate to the MASC conference.
Motion made and seconded. Any other further discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? All right, very good.
Thank you. I think.
Enjoy it.
Just one thing, though, there is a resolution in there that I have strong opinions on, that before we give voting direction, I'd like to make sure that we discuss.
Okay.
You know, I don't know at which meeting we'll be doing that, but
Right.
I just wanted to.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't, because the two of you guys, are you going?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Why don't the two of you see if you can get together, not to be in person, but via email, and maybe come up with what you think needs to be addressed. Obviously, Daryl knows which one he wants to address. And we can have a quick talk about it at school committee. We can probably do it on the 15th,
I'll put
right?
it on the next school committee meeting on the
Okay.
15th. Just so you know, as a superintendent, because it's an MASC resolution, I'm only there for guidance.
Yes, that's fine, but what I would like to do is taking Daryl's, about the one particular one he has, but let's see if there's anything else that we think we want to get our consensus on before we head down there.
Sounds good.
A lot of it is just pretty
Yeah,
routine stuff,
yeah.
but, so it doesn't, we don't need to go bullet by bullet. If you guys think it's pretty straightforward stuff, don't worry about it. But definitely the one there Daryl talking about is about Chapter 7, correct?
Yeah, not the Chapter 7, it's the income tax
Oh, okay,
change.
income tax change. And then anything else you guys see that you think is specific to Littleton or, you know, you think we're gonna have interest in, let's talk about it, okay?
There have been a lot of conversations about, and I wouldn't be surprised if it would have come up at the MASC, about a high-stakes testing moratorium, which I think is a trickier issue than MCAS or CART, which we can have. So I'm not sure if that's going to come up, but that's been a conversation that has happened, so if you, I guess, stay tuned for more, we can discuss it.
Well, I mean, I would think, like, you're only gonna vote on stuff that's on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
Right, so if it's on the agenda, great, let's talk about it. If not, then I would say, if it comes up and it's just people talking about it, listen, chime in, come back and let us know, and we'll go from there.
Great.
Yeah, 'cause I
Thanks,
think-
Alex.
Thank you all, I think.
You say, Daryl?
I was going to say, because if high-stakes testing comes up, I think that we'd want to weigh in as a board, not
Right.
as.
Right, and I don't, if it's not already on the agenda, I may very well be discussed, but it probably won't be any action taken.
We'll take a look at the resolutions and
Okay, thank you.
see what's on there. Next items, I just wanted to give you a preview of what's coming up for presentations, the next few meetings. October 15th, we'll have our school SIP updates in terms of successes. November 5th, update on NWEA testing that you requested last year. We'll have administered it enough times where we feel comfortable giving you some good information. November 19th will be our MCAS summary.
Can I just ask on the NWA, this is for ourselves, for the school committee, so that's November 5th. If you have parents that have been asking you about that, have an opinion, reach out to your constituency and let them know that we're going to be talking about that, because it would be good to have some parental input on what they think it is, because their kids are the ones that are going through it. So let's just try to advertise that a little bit. All right.
Okay, and the last item on my agenda, after a number of years, Steve and I were approached by a couple of property owners, and they were feeling a little uncomfortable because our cross-country teams have been running across their property, so to speak, and rightly so. They asked the question what kind of liability they're carrying if our students are practicing and crossing part of their land. So we talked to the town, talked to our lawyers, and struck up a couple of agreements that are in your packages. And Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you for the comments.
Yeah, so it really happened because there was a change in ownership in one of the properties, and so the new owner came in and discovered this was happening and then approached us and had the concerns. So we reached the agreement, there are some conditions to using that, notification for improvements and things like that. So, and then the other one was the New England Forestry Foundation, which is actually the Prouty Woods area. As it's really private land, even though it's designated as town use, it's really private land. So we approached them and got agreement in writing from them that it's okay for our team to use the property, and then we just had worked with the town insurance and got some insurance certificates issued as well. So we should be covered, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions or concerns. Or
questions or issues on that? Does that mean school committee members can jog across the land too? Is that what we covered?
You bet.
My only question, does maintenance, does the usage, do we have to get permission for like trail maintenance on it, or?
So we have permission from the New England Forestry Foundation to pretty much use the land as they, as the cross-country sees fit, and to maintain those trails, and that foundation maintains the trails as well. The owner of the other property just requests that we seek permission from him before any trail maintenance is done, and just check with him and schedule it so he can approve it before actual work is done. But he was very open to letting the teams continue to use that property. Yeah.
All right, good. Yep. All right, thank you. All right. All right, anything else on the superintendent's report?
That's it, thanks.
All right. We are at the next opportunity for interested citizens.
Wow, ready?
Seeing none. We'll move on to subcommittee reports. Before we dive into the subcommittee reports, I just want to go ahead and we've because now we have Mark on board, we kind of recalibrated, reassigned. So I just want to make sure that we don't vote on this, but we just all make sure we're all on the same page. Daryl is now our rep on the Permanent Municipal Building Committee, but given the extent of that commitment, he's moved off of the safety and security, and Mike Mazzoni has gone on to the safety and security. He had to leave a little early this evening, but I know he was at the last meeting for that. And then Daryl was also acting as, it's not a subcommittee assignment, but was a liaison to the CPAC, and Mark, you've gone ahead and taken that on, so I appreciate that. Is there anything else that we need to do? Mark, do we have any other subcommittee appointments yet? Have we done that? Is there anything else we
should give him something to add.
Yeah. That's not the way I was thinking about it. That's how you bring it up.
That's what happened when I joined.
No,
we're trying to continue a legacy.
We don't do that. I think right now we're covered.
We're good. I'll do a summary.
Doesn't the new guy get the subcommittee in charge of washing all the other school committees' cars?
Subcommittee for moving tables in the police station.
There you go.
All right.
Can we just make sure that it's reflected on the website, the changes in?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's it. And we'll bring it back and make sure that we
Yeah.
see what in writing, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of subcommittee reports, PMBC.
So PMBC, projects are continuing. I believe they've already started the paving at Shaker Lane.
First coat's down.
First coat's down, and I don't know if they're going to try to finish it this weekend there, so that's moving right
So
along.
are they going to be conducive to that?
That's right.
Well, I mean, the plan, whether, they have some time left, but that project seems to be moving right along. You had the walkthrough for the roofing contractors?
Yep, I don't have their exact information off the top of my head. There was a bid opening.
Yeah, I didn't get the report.
Right, there was a bid opening, and I just saw an email late this afternoon that PMBC actually made a recommendation to a letter to award the contract to somebody. I'm not sure where that is, but the roof at the high school should be done by the end of October, so, which is good because it's a big concern for the high school principal and the league, so.
Especially as the weather turns.
Right. And then the next thing coming up, I saw some emails on, you're starting to try to get ready for the budget planning pieces relative to capital and facilities things there. I shot Steve the current 5-year EMG study there, and I would recommend that we take a good look at that and, maybe provide some recommendations back to PMBC as to some of the projects. And also, I think that'd be a good opportunity if we think some of the projects are missing out of that study there, for making sure that, that was one pass through it. It's something that we need to probably keep paying attention to over time, and I'll work to advocate for our projects
But that's good. I mean, your point is correct. I mean, capital, we have a plan, we should be referring to it. Doesn't mean we gotta be constrained by it.
Right.
We can go offside of it, but we should, if we are, or there's something on it we're not doing, we should know why, and we should be making conscious decisions about that.
Right. The terms I sent to Steve in the email was us looking, my proposal would be is thinking about capital, and I put parentheses education.
Yeah.
Capital, facility improvement activities,
right.
and then maintenance activities,
Yeah.
of which that EMG study fits there. And then
Right.
I was thinking about a fourth category, because that's coming up, is energy-based projects,
Mhm.
which fall into two categories. Ones that are projects that are end of life, which may already be in the life cycle budget there, but there might be energy initiatives that we want to take.
Right.
Particularly, I think the town has applied to be part of the Green Community Grant Program.
Correct.
There, so it might be good if we designated which projects could also be considered energy projects, that if there's an opportunity for grant money, we have that readily available to the
That's a
town.
good point. That's a great idea.
For it. So I'd like us to try to be able to get ahead of some of these data calls from the town side, so that we aren't finding out that the project's been allocated and weren't even really aware of it, kind of thing, because I think we might have had that situation last year.
So we are working on the list, and we will need to come before the school committee at the next meeting and have that list ready so the school committee can debate it, and then we need to submit a capital request number to the town by the end of October. So stay tuned, it's coming quickly.
All right, very good. All right, that it for PMBC?
Yes.
Okay. Budget Subcommittee, we had our budget visioning meeting earlier this evening, so we'll take that back to the Budget Subcommittee. We did have a joint meeting with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen. I wasn't in town that day. Is there anything?
Yeah, and actually, that's what had my note that I was going to hold for. After we were talking, you were using the phrase mission and level staff. Unfortunately, they shifted the time, so Alex and Mike didn't make it in time, but Selectman Avella, I made a recommendation that we have a required services budget, which is independent of our staffing level there, and he modified the motion to change level staffing to level staffing / required services budget. So, because things like what we're talking about, even with some of the staffing changes, we have to make staffing changes in order to deliver the services that we're required to as an education district. So I was very pleased that the selectmen modified the language that's in the budget call to accommodate the unique needs of the way we have to staff the school programs.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a little thing, but it sets a level of expectation that we felt constrained by in the past. As we go through the budget process, we have the town side, the school side. It all comes together, and ultimately it is the town budget, and we can't ever remind people often enough that that's the case. But you're right, we have a different look. It's an apple and an orange a little bit. So that helps. It definitely helps, and it can be meaningful in terms of setting expectations and helping people understand why we may not conform exactly as other town departments do. It's not that we're trying to get more just for the sake of getting more, it's that we're trying to meet the mission.
I think it opens up the window for the dialogue when we come in with something that's a little different than the other departments.
Right, we're not getting accused of being on our own, and, we all agree that that's the expectation, so that's good.
Yeah.
All right, was there anything else at that meeting that we needed to be, or was that?
No, I think that was pretty much it.
Okay, all right. Alex, anything else on Budget Subcommittee?
No, I think the budget visioning went well, and folks at home who are still listening but weren't able to show up are welcome to email us, and we'll take that feedback into consideration as well. Bring it back to Budget Subcommittee. Do you want to talk a little bit about our schedule for budget cost center breakdowns?
Yes, right. We did talk about, at the last Budget Subcommittee meeting, one thing we're going to do is come back to this meeting, our open meetings, and talk about each cost center in a little bit more detail, just so that, because we all know what it means, or we think we know what it means, and sometimes we're not always 100% right. But it's just going to be a brief presentation on each cost center. Depending on what the cost center is, we'll do a couple at a time, and then, regular education and special education will probably each get their own night. It'll be similar to what we had tonight, a 15-minute presentation, maybe 15 minutes of discussion. And what we're kicking it off with, what's the... Yeah, no.
Transportation and maintenance was the first one.
Right.
First
Transportation
November
and maintenance.
10th, I think, or something.
Right. And then Alex is going to do a couple, and then I'm going to do one, and you're going to do one. Right? So we'll just have those on the agenda. Those will be there. And we'll have supporting materials that will go into the packet before we do it. Just some type of PowerPoint thing, and we'll go from there. There'll be some numbers, descriptions, and just help us organize our thoughts about what each one of those entails.
And it will be helpful to frame our budget process as very open, because information's always been out there, but again, we're trying to do less sort of on the back end in March when it all happens at once, and bring everyone along with us.
And a lot of it will lend itself to what we were just talking about, which is these are the things we have to do on a minimal basis, and then there is some discretionary things we can do after the fact, but this will help us show exactly which is which.
And it will help, I think, each of us understand the budget a little more, so that when we go out into the community and are having these conversations throughout the year, not just come springtime, that we'll be able to talk about these things in more detail.
Okay. All right. Great.
Well, one last question. Next Friday, our budget subcommittee meeting won't work. I sent out an email earlier today, I believe it was, about Thursday as an alternate.
Should
that
be
work
fine
for you? Thursday, 8:30?
Do you think we have reason to meet, or you want?
You won't be here on Thursday?
I'm fine either way. I can do Thursday.
going to
or
Rochester.
we could.
I think we should meet. I think we should go ahead and keep going. Yeah, let's meet.
So we'll meet Thursday, 8:30. Steve won't be there, but
That's okay.
that's fine. Okay.
If it's brief, but we'll post it, and then we have it.
That's okay.
All right.
And before we move on to Daryl's point earlier about PMBC capital items, when do we want to have a discussion about, would we want to do that in the full meeting, or would we want to bring that to one of the subcommittees? Because if it's preparing.
Well, I think we got to have it, we're going to have it here at one, however,
yes.
we can preface it at Budget Subcommittee, but I think you're looking about coming back after we get done with our work, right, to go back to PMBC with it?
Well, PMBC is going to probably get asked for a list of recommended projects for the facilities and infrastructure improvements budget there, and I'd like to just make sure, that the list that they're working off of reflects what the school needs are. I mean, I can work that with Steve as appropriate there. That one is not necessarily our budget request.
Right.
I just want to make sure
Well, I
that
think
we've
it's-
got the right projects in there.
I think it's easy enough that, given that we have the deadline on the town side, we may as well just get it all done and organized appropriately.
Yeah,
And then Daryl can go back to the PMBC with that stuff, and we'll have the rest of our stuff ready to go. So why don't we think about it like that?
Yeah, I'm still receiving capital request information from the principals of the schools, so I'm have to incorporate all that,
Daryl
and then the
will
facilities as
stay in
well.
touch with you and work on that, and then we'll split it out accordingly.
I'm just encouraging the proactive communications with them.
For sure.
And we'll be bringing that to the October 15th meeting, our capital request.
And then my very, very last thing on this subject, I promise, and we're still 25
You realize
minutes.
last is an
You're just
absolute
using
term.
up
It's not a
time
relative
on this.
term,
We're
right?
25 minutes early, and I'm going to be done in about 30 seconds. But the budget description of our process. That I sent out,
Yep.
The only feedback I got was from Daryl, which is just if we can include a schedule of meetings as best as we can, which I think is a very good idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's good to
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Just wanted to bring it back one more time before I put it up.
Okay. All right. Policy Subcommittee.
Wait. Oh, kidding.
Well, don't do that.
I have a half an hour.
You don't have to use
No
it.
candy, no you don't.
No. So, kicking off the season, I had printed, but it just got missed in the packet, so we'll put it in the next one, is sort of the work plan for budgets, for budgets, for policy. We got about 75 policies scheduled for review this year. It's a little workload. But actually, based on the numbers, we went down from 260 to like 170, so we might actually be able to put them on a 3-year review cycle now instead of a 4-year cycle, now that we're caught up the bulk of them there. And I I have a policy meeting scheduled with Kelly Monday, and we'll probably have the first 20 of them ready to start cycling through first and second readings here, so on it. Work is underway.
All right, policy related, we did have a discussion last meeting about the dress code with a couple of the students that came up, and we talked about how the school committee dress code policy is very broad, high level, doesn't even talk about particular clothing, and that the school handbooks, student handbooks at each school are much more specific. And we talked to them about reaching out to the principals at the middle school and the high school, and we just wanted to, I just want to get abreast, I think you guys have, that's on your school improvement council.
For November.
For November, okay. And how are we doing at the high school with getting a chance for them to meet with you and talk about?
Yep, I met with the two girls, made a proposal this week.
Okay.
A very positive, productive meeting.
Okay.
Look forward to bringing them to school council to take a look at our handbook as well. And we did, see, we can make some changes. We even had some suggestions ourselves that we thought would be improved.
All right, good. All right. And then I know one of the things that, at least I took away from it, was maybe having the middle school and the high school look in how, if they could align it a little more closely in terms of the language being used and the expectations, because it's two different buildings, but there is some similarity and some and I'm not saying they should be exactly the same. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't suggest that that's the case at all, but at least if we can just make sure that they're reviewed together and see if the alignment and the expectation can make sure that it's in agreement.
If I could chime in. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and the more research I do, the more I realize that there are a lot of schools and school districts in Massachusetts that are pushing the envelope on the interpretation of the law. My recommendation to the two principals just yesterday was that when you reframe your policies, I do not want an extension of the law. I want them written within the parameters of the statute. And I'll worry about the case law myself, but I want them in the parameters of the statute. So don't go beyond that, because there's no sense in going beyond that, just so you know.
And that's something that a lot of districts, I think, fail to recognize. And so this conversation is a good opportunity for us to recognize that and sort of hopefully do the pack in getting closer to the legal standard.
Right.
And then the other piece, just in my continued piece there, so in doing the policy reviews, I also went into a lot of districts' handbooks to look at how, our method and procedure is very similar to the other ones. What I did notice in a couple of them there, where they had the grade-specific or school-based pieces there, and then the middle school one, a couple of them had like almost like a transition section that said, these are the requirements that you'll start seeing at the high school, and here's where to help people understand where the boundaries and differences were going to be. I don't remember what specifically the couple of districts I saw that, but it made it clear that there's differences, here's ours, and these are the kinds of things where we're seeing the boundaries that start sliding between the different schools, kind of thing. Just a couple of, it's not just in the reading other districts' policies, you actually need to dig into their handbooks, and you'll see that we're actually not that, the language is different based on every different school there, and like I said, I do get concerned about ones that are over-interpreting the law and trying to put that in there, because you get legal smithing, not just wordsmithing at that point, and I'm not sure that that's where we want to be.
It's not our area of expertise.
No. And it's not where we want to be as a district.
Right.
So.
All right, thank you. All right.
I have a motion
for
the executive.
Okay. Do we have anything else we need to go over?
I'm all set.
Just before we do that, our next meeting is Thursday, October 15th. 6:30 to 7 is a working session on school committee goal development. It's an open session, but that's specifically what we were talking about there. 7 to 7:45 is a public hearing on the addition of CPR at the high school as a graduation requirement. And then at 7:45, we'll start our general business. So just a little different format, and just want to make sure people are aware of that. That's our next meeting, okay? All right, given that, we will go into executive session tonight.
Yes. I move that the school committee adjourn from open session to executive session with no intention to reconvene in open session for the purpose of reviewing minutes from prior executive sessions.
Second?
Related to contract negotiation.
Related to contract negotiations.
Second. This is a roll call vote. Alex?
Aye.
Darrell?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll see you October 15th.